Good morning, noon, or night, wherever and whenever you are listening to The Shift. I'm your host. My name is Doug McKenty. This interview was recorded on January 8th, 2020. Today on the program, I'm happy to announce my conversation with independent media activist and journalist Steve Poikonen. Steve is the producer and co-host of the up-and-coming news and information video podcast called Slow News Day. He has been a tireless advocate for First Amendment rights and is one of the few journalists covering the ongoing saga concerning the plight of Julian Assange, who continues to fester inside one of the UK's most notorious prisons, now awaiting the potential appeal for extradition to the United States to face espionage charges. This effort continues despite clear whistleblower status that should protect him under the universal rights concerning freedom of speech. Steve has posted a total of 79 weekly episodes of the Free Assange Vigil, which places him as one of the few sources on the internet providing complete and up-to-date information about the Assange case as it unfolds. Slow News Day also features in-depth interviews with experts and activists promoting narratives from outside the mainstream, interviewing guests such as Whitney Webb and Ryan Christian of The Last American Vagabond, and members of Veterans Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, among many others. Steve joins the show after a grueling week in Washington, DC, where he initially traveled to cover the U.S. response to Judge Baraitser's final decision concerning the extradition hearing completed last spring. While last Monday's decision appeared at first to be a win for the Assange team, as extradition was denied, the reasons for denial leave the door wide open for increased international cooperation concerning the suppression of freedom of speech, while only citing Assange's mental health and the harsh conditions inside American prisons as the reasons for keeping Assange in the UK. To make matters worse, just 2 days later, the same judge denied bail for Assange awaiting a pending U.S. appeal, and he will remain inside the notorious Belmarsh prison for the foreseeable future. It should be noted that Judge Baraitser's concern for Assange's mental health can be mitigated by the fact that the horrific conditions he has endured inside Belmarsh are the cause of his presently deteriorating mental health conditions in the first place. Despite still having never been convicted of a crime, Julian Assange remains an example to journalists everywhere of what happens to those who reveal too much about the actions of world superpowers who prefer to work under the cover of darkness. Though his focus was on Assange, Steve found himself in the interesting situation of being in Washington, D.C. as Congress was about to debate the legitimacy of electoral college votes submitted by each state in order to finalize the contested 2020 election process. Extending his stay, he decided to cover the event live as Trump supporters from around the country amassed on the Capitol in support of the president as the debate raged on inside the congressional building. Unbeknownst to Steve, he was about to bear witness to one of the most controversial events ever recorded in the history of the U.S. Congress, as thousands of Trump supporters somehow made their way into the building, stopping the proceedings and causing many senators and representatives to flee for their safety. The mainstream media has called the event an insurrection and an attempt to take control of the government and claim the crowd was incited by Trump to do just that. Alternative narratives abound, however, as many wonder why security was so lax considering the size of the rally, and question the identity of those who reportedly stormed the building in the first place. Tune into this conversation as we get news and information concerning this event from someone who witnessed them firsthand. You can find out more about the work of Steve Poikonen on the web at slownewsday.com, on YouTube at Slow News Day, and on Twitter at Slow News Day Show. As always, you can find out more about The Shift at www.theshiftnow.com. We're on YouTube at The Shift, on Twitter at DMcKenty, or look up The Shift with Doug McKenty on your favorite podcast hosting platform. Enjoy this conversation between myself and Steve Poikonen. I'd like to thank Steve for agreeing to this interview, and thank you for helping to make The Shift. And hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am happy to have Steve Poikonen of Slow News Day with me here for the 63rd episode of The Shift. Steve has just been in Washington, D.C. last week. This is the first episode I've recorded since the shenanigans. He went there for the Assange hearings that happened on Monday, but then you were one of the lucky ones that stayed for the shenanigans that happened on Wednesday. So welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on. I'm really happy to talk to a sane person today. I was just saying before we kicked in the show, because we're seeing all this rollout, of course, of new censorship and the fallout from the rampage at the Capitol building. So how's it going, Steve?
I'm still trying to unpack all of this, Doug, but it's great to see you again, great to talk to you again.
Yeah,
And
likewise.
I'm man, that was a weird week.
Oh my God. I mean, I'm like you. It's like I feel like I'm at the psychologist and I'm emotionally processing, years of an abusive relationship or something.
I
Like, what the hell is going on?
I've never been like at ground zero directly in the middle of a full-blown psyop before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Eh,
I mean, what are your thoughts about the whole thing? Because we got so many different in terms of what happened at the Capitol. I still want to talk about Assange as well, but in
Oh
terms of
yeah.
what happened at the Capitol, we can start there. Just what are your feelings about what happened and what's really going on?
So again, man, it's gonna take a while to like really unpack everything that went
Hmm.
down, and that's going to require me putting my head together with a handful of other journalists and content creators who were on the ground and in different spots and at different times than me. I can only speak to what I saw,
Hmm.
you know. Um,
So where
so
were you?
okay, so in the morning, before the Capitol thing, before the everybody walked over to the Capitol,
Right.
I was at the spot where Trump spoke. I was standing right by the entrance for most of that and for pretty much all of Trump's speech. Um, Jason Burmis has a few videos up or something like that, and I've
Hmm.
been hanging out and talking pretty extensively off camera with Dylan Avery, which was fantastic. Uh, can Incredibly nice to actually meet the dude in person. Um, I talked to a bunch of people on the ground there that Doug, this may come as a shock to you, but they were people of color.
Oh
Uh,
wow. Yeah.
yeah, they were in no way, shape, or form Nazis or neo Nazis. I
Right.
talked to a wonderfully day drunk woman from Tennessee. Who
I believe it.
said,
I bet there was more than one there.
"Oh, it was like a an alcohol only Grateful Dead lot, Doug. It
Right.
was fucking weird. It really was. It was really like it was surreal, bro.
Sure.
Did lots of costumes and shit like that. It was fantastic. But this lady from Tennessee told me that like she didn't believe anything that anyone had been telling her about this event, right, left, whatever the fuck it was. So she felt compelled to drive up and see it for herself.
Hmm.
And she was like, "My God, man, I've been treated with respect and I've been treated incredibly nice by everyone around here." And I'm like, "Do I need to point out that you're like a pretty banging blonde chick?"
Right.
And she's like, "Well, yeah, but I mean, um, and I mean, it just, it was from what I could tell, 95 to 99% of the people that were on the ground there were there because they felt like they had been through an illegitimate election
Hmm.
and this was their way to, exercise their voice about that.
Right. And
There
what are
were
your
definitely,
feelings about the election itself? Because I mean, of course, the mainstream media just comes straight out and it's like there's just no evidence whatsoever of election fraud. To me, it's so frustrating. I've done 3 interviews over the years, starting 10 years ago on public radio here in Mendocino County, and talking about the voting machines. I mean, they've been suspect forever. There's been so many problems. I mean, I was hoping that there was going to be some good come out of this where Congress might actually analyze these things, and we'd have a conversation about election integrity, and then it's just turned into this entire disaster with the mainstream media drilling it into people that everything's great, everything's fine with the elections. There's no evidence. So what do you think
well,
about, I mean, what are your
my
feelings about the election in general?
okay, so I was an election integrity advocate before, a couple of months ago.
Mhm.
Okay. And before 2016 and
Yeah.
before 2012
Well,
when
right. I mean, Bush
yeah,
Kerry, right?
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
So
2004, like that one was a head scratcher too.
so So none of this surprised me. What has surprised me, though, really, is the almost like violent reaction that people, especially like in the progressive space, have
Yeah.
when you question the integrity of this particular election. And
Right.
it's like, are they using the same fucking machines?
Yeah.
Yeah, they
After what
are.
they did to Bernie, I mean,
Can
my
we still
God.
not audit the source code or the machines at all? No,
Right.
no, we can't.
We can't
But
talk about it or else we're fascists, we're white nationalists.
the machines themselves have proprietary software, and accessing the data and accessing the code and accessing the programming is something that is monumentally impossible.
Yeah.
And as long as that's around, we're not going to have legitimate elections. You the Dominion machines that the right is losing their minds over have Diebold source code.
Right. Right.
Diebold were the machines that, the Bush Gore and Bush Kerry. That's the source code from those machines. So that's one of the things that Trump's team will never fucking tell you. Because look, man, I can't remember if I can swear on your show or not. So if I can't, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it's all good. It's all good.
Uh, uh, but no, I did not think that Trump was going to put forth a legitimate challenge to this election. His
Hmm.
team hasn't done that so far. They've filed all of the wrong, they've tried to walk down all of the wrong avenues.
Right.
As a hell of a fundraiser. They've riled up a ton of people, rightfully, you know. Um, but all of that sort of led us to where we started, which was the Capitol steps on Wednesday. And
Sure.
at like 1 o'clock, we left the area entire. Like we left that part of DC entirely. My partner over at Action for Assange, Andrew Smith, um, has a day job. I have a day job too. And he had to go run payroll for the company that he runs. So we went back to go do that. I had to give an interview anyway. There was absolutely no cell phone reception down by the ellipse and the Washington Monument. They were jamming signals everywhere.
Right.
Uh, Nobody could get a live stream out. Nobody could get a text message out. It was incredibly frustrating. So in order to do the interview, I had to go back to the Airbnb anyway. Around like 2 seconds after the Capitol got breached, our phones started blowing up. So we were like, oh shit, let's load up and get back down there. So
Right.
we did, and we got a bunch of video of what we saw from where we walked in. We parked over by the back, which I guess is the front, according to the map. Um, I wonder if can I screen share on this? Yeah, I can. I'll try and show you roughly where we were. Um, but it was the entrance. I guess if you're looking at the Capitol building on the National Mall, right? So
Okay. Right.
Washington Monument way straight down that way, and you're standing and looking at the Capitol building to the upper left-hand side where the fence was trampled. That's where we walked in. We walked right in over the trampled part of the fence.
Okay.
We walked straight up onto the steps. Weren't like somebody yelled out like, "Is that Antifa?" We just started chuckling.
Right.
Fuck you, you fucking
Well,
numbnut.
it's funny. I heard in one video where the crowd is like booing the people that are trying to break in and break the windows, and they're yelling at them, calling them Antifa, like calling them, trying to call them out. I mean, I don't know if there were Antifa there or what, but
Okay, so in that moment, everybody that was doing something that you didn't agree with that second was Antifa.
right.
Okay. Like, it was fucking weird, dude. It
I'm
was fucking
sure.
weird.
Yeah.
Um, we had on Fox masks and like, fucking orange fucking prison jumpsuit and shit. Like, obviously not, a member of a fucking limited hangout or black skinny jeans enthusiast. Neither of us,
Yeah.
not how that worked out. But anyway, we were able to walk right up. We were up there for quite a while. Um, we may or may not have gone in for about 10 minutes. And inside there may or may not, because I don't really know, because I can't,
Certainly not.
But like a pair of cops or a pair of DHS cops every couple 100 feet. I overheard that some of the people inside were told, like, okay, well, you got about an hour before we start shooting, and if you're still here when that happens, it's your bad.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. And they're just standing around. I mean, the videos that I've seen are literally the cops are like standing around and
Chilling.
people are wandering through. It's
Yep.
almost like a day we're going to the museum, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus.
And so the people outside are like, at one point, right when we started to right when we split from the steps, they were reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, and then they
Right.
started chanting, "We love people."
Yeah.
Not we love any particular kind of people, or we love any like particular, fan of this particular team people, but we love people.
Right. Any sign of white nationalists anywhere?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Without a doubt. Yeah, not many.
Right.
But the usual groups were up there. There's but in terms of like rampant Nazis, no.
Yeah.
The vast majority of the people that I ran into with the entire event, no matter what time of day it was, again, were like, Trump supporting people who only supported Donald Trump because they thought he was an outsider. They were there because he thought he got cheated.
Yeah.
Donald Trump told them right after he said, we're going to count every vote. We're not going to concede an inch, blah, 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 blah. 5 minutes later, he's like, and we're going to leave all of this up to Mike Pence. And he's about to make his decision. So let's go over to the Capitol.
Right.
And
yeah, I mean, what is all this that Trump incited the violence? Did you hear any kind of language like that that could have been interpreted that way by people?
If you are stretching the meaning of words
right
past reality and into ridiculous magical thinking and propaganda, sure, absolutely. Absolutely. But no, man, no. He didn't tell anybody storm the fucking building. He didn't tell anybody try to get yourself shot,
right.
And the people that were on the ground there felt used.
Right.
They felt used. They felt used by Trump. They felt used by Mitch McConnell. They felt used by Mike Pence. They felt used by the Republican Party and the establishment in general. Like, and this was something that increased when I was on the plane flying back yesterday. Like, it was a plane full of people that had been at the event, and they were all like, "Fuck this shit, dude. We got played."
Oh man, that's crazy. Like, people literally understood that what had happened was like outside of their control. They were all there because they wanted to guarantee the integrity of an election.
Yeah.
And a couple of hundred people, and so, by the way, in the videos that I've seen, just almost no security. Like, that's what's blowing my mind. I mean, it seemed like they let these people in. I mean, they're
given a stand down order.
Right. And do you know who gave that order? Like, where did that come from?
I don't. I can't speak to where the order, who gave.
I don't think anybody. Half the people seem to think it was Trump. Like, people think it was Trump that didn't order the proper security there. But it seems to me like it would have been Nancy Pelosi. It would have been Congress.
Well, let's parse that a minute, because a couple, like, when the coronavirus relief package got signed, the here's your $600 peasant, here's billions for
right
corporations in other countries, and oh, and by the way, and I mentioned this on a couple of different shows, and on a couple of other people's shows too. I'm like, what does the coronavirus have to do with the allocation of $188 million to refurnishing and the upkeep and maintenance of the inside of the Capitol building and the grounds.
Oh, interesting.
What the fuck? Why is this in the bill? I don't
Right.
understand what this has to do with the. Oh,
Maybe it's going to get trashed.
okay. Okay, now it's starting to make a
That's
little bit
interesting.
more
Yeah.
sense, But yeah, I mean, it was right there. I got a couple of tweets out about it from like the day that it happened, like, hey, what the fuck is this?
Right.
Here we are, with, however many millions of dollars of damage they're going to say was done to the Capitol building, both the interior and the grounds. And magically, there's all this money just waiting for them to
Yeah.
replace, repair, and fix everything. Days before this event, they were already drafting articles of impeachment for Donald Trump, because what makes more sense, Doug, than impeaching a president days before he's out of office?
Right. I know.
Is it just to give Mike Pence something to do besides run from gay thoughts? Is that what it is?
I mean, I can't even believe the whole narrative. And people think that, like, I mean, really, like, a lot of people believe that Trump incited the violence and started, I mean, the mainstream media is like, started an insurrection and tried to have a coup. And it's like, clearly this was the worst thing that could have happened to Donald Trump. I mean, clearly he was hoping for clear and open and transparent debate on the floor of Congress about the election integrity during an afternoon, and he had nothing to gain by inciting people to storm the Congress. And then when they did, look at the fallout. It's just been disastrous. I mean, he himself is now censored on Twitter and Facebook. I mean, oh
I
my
don't.
God.
Okay, so can we kind of like, can we talk about that for a minute, dude? Because this is, I mean, I say on my show all the time that we live in a cartoon, but this is just
Well, the
next
antics.
level, man.
I know.
I mean,
I know.
you're going to basically like deplatform the president.
Right. Well, I've been talking about it because he's had his tweets censored here and there off and on. And I'm thinking, what's going on with the American people? And I'm watching so many people cheer it on. I mean, I've had friends here that cheered on when so-and-so got censored, when the Epic Times got censored. Oh, those are conservatives. They should be censored. Thank God they got kicked off Facebook. I mean, and I'm just like, what's going on in the United States of America where people are advocating for censorship no matter what? And then when the president gets censored, and you see people standing up and cheering that the president has been censored. I mean, I actually started watching his tweets. I don't usually pay much attention to him, but a couple of weeks ago, I was like, I'm going to start checking out what this guy's saying. And I'm looking at speeches and stuff coming up on Twitter that are getting no press. I mean, anytime he talked about the election integrity issue, it was as if the entire corporate media just completely ignored the president of the United States. And I'm thinking to myself, this is completely unprecedented. This is unreal that he basically only had Twitter to try to explain to people how he felt about the election. And then Twitter cuts him. And that's it. Oh, he's just the president. We don't want to listen to that guy anymore. It's unbelievable to me. And people aren't concerned. Like, oh, we hated him anyway, so thank God he's being censored. Well, he's the freaking president. I mean, come on. Like, I don't think you're a Trump supporter either. I mean, but like, we're watching the complete breakdown of the entire democratic process here, and people are cheering it on as a result of crap like the antics on the Capitol 2 days ago. It's just been building and building ever since the coronavirus thing and the Black Lives Matter thing and then the election thing. It's just crazy. So I don't even know where to go.
I know. This is so incredibly just, I don't know, out of hand. But for a while now, Whitney Webb and I and Jason Burmis, a couple other people, Last American Vagabond, have been saying that something like what was happening on Wednesday was abso-fucking-lutely going to happen, because the DHS has been putting out memos for months and months and months, all year practically of 2020, since March of 2020, predicting and unstoppable wave of domestic right-wing terror attacks starting at the nation's capital.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Right.
centered around the election.
You know,
They're also predicting like a total collapse of the grid and the internet. And they know about it, but there's nothing they can do to stop it. And
right.
also maybe probably somehow Iran is involved.
And they're running simulations, to figure out what they're going to do when it happens. Yeah, and it's not going to be good for us what they do decide to do. I mean, it's just unbelievable. We can watch these guys plan, the complete destruction of democracy and a corporatist takeover or a fascist takeover by the people who are projecting onto everyone else. And we watch them do it, and we try to people like you and I are trying to tell people this is what they're going to do. These are their plans. We've almost gotten so good at what we're doing. I mean, I'm just talking about the whole truth movement in general, that we're looking at them in real time, and we're starting to be able to call what's going on because we're paying attention now. We know they always run these simulations beforehand. We know we can read the plans, the white papers, the plans that they're making. And then we're trying to tell people this is what's going on. And it's just still the corporate media to me. I mean, this is the thing. The corporate media is controlling the minds of the population. They're like zombies that cannot stop listening to the corporate media. And they can't get out. It seems to me like they can't get out of the left-right paradigm too. That's another thing that I just harp on, and a lot of us do. When people are self-identifying as left, and then the corporate media says, here's what the left thinks. Oh, and everybody just thinks that. And I mean, or here's what the right thinks, and everybody on the right thinks that. And you just got to be like, can we just think for ourselves? Can we? Because maybe if we thought for ourselves, we could clearly see what's going on here, and we could put a stop to it in somehow.
Well, doing that requires nuance.
Yeah.
And nuance, as we all know, was the first casualty when a weasel got stuck in the Large Hadron Collider in 2016, forcing a hard reset and hurling us into the stupidest of all possible timelines.
Right. That's
and by the way, the
that's as
weasel
good
thing
as
is true.
Yeah.
That's true. I can't say for sure whether that hurtled us into the stupidest of all possible timelines, but I think the evidence is on my side for that.
Yeah.
I really do.
I hope it's an alternative dimension here, man, because I don't know. And can we pull the weasel out or something? How do we get back to sanity?
One in.
Yeah, that's right.
We got to do. We got to send another one in and at least get to a different timeline, because even if it's worse, it can't be dumber.
Yeah, right. No kidding. Oh my God.
Look at what Biden and Harris get out of this too. Look at what they get out of it. They get to censor anyone they want. They get complete control of the internet. They get to use this. They get to use a cop shooting that girl in the neck, executing her essentially, as a way to grab the guns of the right because they were there.
Right.
And so they get to do that.
I mean, that's what I've been saying. I've been tweeting out, who benefits? Who benefits? Because people are just lining up to blame Trump and conservatives for what happened.
Oh, they're blaming me too, Doug.
Yeah.
They're blaming me. They're blaming they're blaming my good friends Fiorella Isabel and Pasta Jardula from the Convo Couch.
Mm-hmm.
Fee is now not just a Nazi collaborator, Doug. She's the head Nazi in charge. She is now the HNIC.
And you're bringing up another point, which is who's really getting censored? Is it the white nationalists? No, it's us. Like, we are getting censored. I'm trying to tell, like, I don't know how to talk politics with people anymore. I'm just when I go out into my community and I try to have a normal conversation, if I mention any of my beliefs, they immediately want to pigeonhole me into some, whatever. It's the left-right paradigm.
And how long have you been there?
Oh, I've been living here for 15 plus years, 17 years
so
now.
Have I. And you know where I am.
Yeah.
And now, like, people either, like, and just sort of walk the other way.
Yeah, right.
or they're like, oh my God, I can't fucking wait to hear what this guy has to say about it.
Right.
Because I've always been this person, nothing about anything that I say or do in my activism or on Slow News Day or on the Free Assange vigils is none of that
Yeah.
is new. None of it. Like the information as it comes in that's breaking is new, but my personal viewpoint
Sure.
on this, what my thoughts on US politics and the global intelligence sharing network and all of that stuff, all of that was part of who I was well before
Right.
any of this. So my community is very small, and they've
you're
had
down in the Santa Cruz area, just so people know. We're
yeah,
both
I'm in the
basically in
Santa
Northern
Cruz Mountains.
California. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're the Emerald Triangle in miniature.
Yeah.
We are from Felton up past Boulder Creek. It's yeah, I mean it's basically the same people, same mentality, except for we do have more of the Silicon Valley
Right.
neoliberals over the last like dozen years.
Sure.
Because of proximity and because it used to be cheap land before those freaking jerks bought
Right.
it all. But hey, since we got burned out, it's getting pretty cheap again.
It's getting cheap again. Yeah.
2020 was the longest decade that I've had in a while.
Well, one of the things I wanted to bring up, because we were kind of talking about the timeline, and the interesting thing is that I actually parted ways with my local radio station, and this was and I volunteered there for 7 years, served on the board of directors there, KZYX Mendocino County. And then eventually tried to stand up to fight for freedom of speech, because I was kind of the token conspiracy theorist. My show would, like, I interviewed Bev from Black Box Voting on public radio there. I interviewed Michael Rupert, right? 9/11 Truth, and that his whole collapse thing he had going on. So I was sort of like the guy. I would sneak it in, but they didn't, they didn't really appreciate it. And it certainly they weren't. I mean, I was always like, look, I think there's 40-50% of people living in the Mendocino Hills here who would love to see a couple of hardcore conspiracy theory show. Let's have a freaking UFO show and a Bigfoot show. Yeah. But what happened at our local station, even back then, there was already this cancel culture that had already happened. Because the show, the radio station also has NPR, and the NPR crowd had basically taken over and had slowly but surely forced out anyone that did not push the NPR narrative. They were crazy people. Oh, you don't believe everything NPR said, you're just a crazy person. I mean, I heard it all, even back then. But having said that, up until Trump, at least, especially on the internet, right? The conspiracy theory world, or the truth movement, or we never have a word for it. We all call it whatever we want to call it.
I try to avoid truther.
Yeah. Well, they've co-opted all the terms. So all of a sudden, if we say the wrong word, we must be white nationalists, fascists, or something. I don't
remember when we were just Art Bell enthusiasts.
Yeah, right.
You remember? I mean, that was it was fine.
Exactly. Nobody cares when it's the show comes on at midnight. But hey, it starts to go mainstream, or you're on YouTube. James Corbett, I mean, this is my point. James Corbett was #1 on YouTube, once a week with his shows. People were sucking it up, and it took Trump. I mean, that's why I actually am starting to identify Trump. I mean, the entire Trump presidency to me is controlled opposition, right? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
Glad you said that, and I want to get into that a little bit.
Yeah,
because I have thoughts on that, Doug.
Let's do it. I mean, his presidency has destroyed our movement, for whatever it's called, or for whatever it's worth, and they knew it. I mean, I think they stole the election for Trump 4 years ago. I mean, I was like, we were all shocked when Hillary didn't win. And how do you think that happened? You think the machines had something to do with that? I mean, and then they've used Trump for 4 years to demolish anybody that thinks like us, to censor us, to sideline us, to call us fascists, to do whatever they want. And it's been devastating. So now let's hear what you have to say.
I was trying to explain this to a member of the American Patriots movement
Mhm.
on the plane yesterday. I'm like, look, dude, you are going to have to provide me with more than a take my word for it that Donald Trump and his entire presidency wasn't 100% used to usher us into this period of accelerationism that we're in right now.
Mhm.
We're at the doorstep of the Great Reset. We're I we're in
Right.
the middle of medical tyranny. It's this is going to be an unprecedented era of censorship,
Yeah.
and we've never been more divided as people and malleable as people and susceptible to narrative as we've become over the last 4 years because of exactly what you were just saying. Because everyone who's been a part of this, like, post-partisan, let's look at the source material first and make up our minds and not have somebody who gets paid several $1,000,000
Yeah.
tell us how we should think. Like, whatever you want to call that, that's what we've been. We've been outside of politics,
Right.
so, or past politics. So that's why I call what we do post-partisan.
Yeah.
We're not
I
playing
love that term,
sport politics.
post-partisan, yeah.
We're not. Um, and, and we've been almost fully discredited in every corner of the internet. Uh, and Trump derangement syndrome is a huge part of why that is. But I mean, I do believe that Trump was used and put in place so that he could be the foil, the WWE bully.
Absolutely. I can't believe, I mean, to me, well, first of all, let's go back to Bush and Cheney and Rumsfeld. Okay, those guys were fascists. All right. Like when people started calling Trump a fascist and saying all this shit about him, I was like, but sure, he's a conservative Republican guy, whatever. But remember Bush? I mean, the Bush family literally funded the Nazis in Germany. Like, come on. And nobody
Right.
cared about it back then. They didn't care about it. But, 4 months of alt right media narrative all over the news, 3 years ago, and Trump is, some kind of neo Nazi fascist guy. And it's like, oh my God. I
And to
mean,
be fair, I think a bunch of those actual neo-Nazi fascist guys looked looked to Trump's presidency as their in.
yeah,
They're like, well, if everybody's gonna be a Nazi anyway, let's just come out colors fucking showing,
sure.
and maybe we'll pick up some coin out of it.
But what
You
was so
know?
interesting, something just to go into that period right before Charlottesville, where all of a sudden the news, I mean, this is what I can't believe about, and because guys like you and I are outside of the corporate narrative, because we're just doing our own research, like you start to be able to see how influential the corporate narrative really is. Like I hadn't even heard, I research this stuff every day. I didn't know this alt-right movement or whatever, and all of a sudden it's in the news and I'm like, who are these guys? Maybe I should check them out.
Yeah, who are these well-formed, fully funded, tons of member groups that didn't exist until 3 weeks ago?
Right, right.
Huh. Well, that's
How
weird.
interesting. Yeah.
you know and then man, but look at all of the things that got done under Trump that never would have fucking flown had Hillary Clinton won that election or
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders won that election,
Right.
because we had three of like three successive largest ever recorded upward transfers of wealth in human history,
Yeah.
in the first two rounds of tax cuts and the CARES Act. Trump was the first president to invoke the Insurrection Act. You remember that in March of last year when that happened for like 10 days?
It's crazy.
Trump was able to be the heel and the face of everything that was everything that needs to, I don't know, go away in order for this technocratic panopticon that Whitney and I and a couple other people have been talking about for so long now.
Yeah.
Um, and so he played that part perfectly. He's
Right.
still playing that part perfectly. Whether or not that's conscious, I
That,
can't speak to.
that was
Like,
going to be my next question. Does he doing it? Does he know what he's doing? I don't think he does. I think
I
he's
think
just been a
that
useful idiot for these guys for 4 years, and they've just played him like a fiddle.
eh,
And you
I
know,
I think that Trump is smart enough to know that he's not running the show.
yeah.
I think that he had to figure that out on the job.
Yeah, that's what I think too. I think he became president and then was probably surprised at how little power the president actually has. That when he really wanted to roll something out, they were like, "No, Don, you can't do that." And he was like, "What? I'm the president." Yeah, sorry. And if he pushed too hard, well, we'll just have a little impeachment party for you,
Yep,
or we'll just throw a Charlottesville and call you a racist all over the news. So if you're not playing the game, then this is what you're going to get, 4 years of
exactly,
this. Enjoy. That's
exactly.
yeah,
And what Chuck Schumer told him before, right as soon as he got inaugurated, you know,
right.
intelligence community's got 6 ways from Sunday
Six
to get
ways from Sunday. I was thinking about that today too. Like, my God, did Chuck Schumer just said it? And then that's exactly what that to me that's the whole last 4 years. We've just been witnessing the 6 ways to Sunday that Trump could get shafted by the intelligence agencies. That's what we've been. That's been the Trump presidency. Go
and look, man,
go down in history, man.
I am no fan of Donald Trump. Okay,
Right?
he's the one who picked up the ball from the Obama administration and charged Julian Assange,
Yeah.
along with continuing all of the the drone program, the 7 forever wars that we were in when the day he took the job, continued those. He
Yeah.
orchestrated 6 at least coups in South America and Central America alone, not to mention the fact that he ramped up U.S. military operations and presence on the African continent in a way that is just unheralded in a post-colonialization, world.
Right, frankly, which I'm starting to talk about. There is no this is the colony right now. I want
Yeah,
us to realize that post-colonial, no, the
yeah.
colonization is happening right now, and they're getting really good at it. And part of
This is
being good at it is
colonization of the
convincing
mind.
us. Yeah, absolutely, and
And
the resources. I mean, shit,
yeah, no,
you know.
Corey Morningstar talks about the digital recolonization of Africa. She doesn't really go into the military aspect too much, focusing more on the tech side,
Uh-huh.
which provides just a. I mean, if you're familiar with her work, but she's a fucking hot sword, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and she does great work on this. And then Danny Sherson, um, who's become a pretty good friend of mine now, over the last year or so. Um,
Cool.
he's a retired Army major. He's a former history professor at West Point, and is one of the more prominent and prescient anti-war veteran voices that we have in America right now. He has detailed one of the very, very few people who have really the U.S. military presence in Africa and the ramping up over it over the last like decade or so.
Right.
So
Yeah, I
between
remember
those
when Bush
two,
started AFRICOM. He started AFRICOM in early 2000s, and then
Mhm.
they've just been ramping it up since then. But what you're bringing up that I wish the American people would wake up to this. This is why the left-right paradigm completely breaks down. There's a line from the first president to now, and it doesn't change. Things don't change when a presidency changes. They don't switch up what they're doing. They just keep doing what they're doing. And I mean, that's just part of the evidence that shows you that the presidency really doesn't run the show. It's the military industrial complex. Maybe it's the intelligence agencies, whoever, somebody's really running the show, but the president doesn't change anything. They get in there and they do what their predecessor did, and they amp it up a little bit more, and they implement whatever new policies are going to benefit the military industrial complex, and that's all they do. um same as it ever was. And I don't know what we can do to change this, but I do know that it's not going to change as long as people continue to identify with this guy's my guy and that guy's my guy, and let's fight over who's the better guy, because none of them are good, right? They're all just pulling the same crap.
You're absolutely right. It's like the old Bill Hicks joke, where the president gets inaugurated, and then they take him into a room just off the Oval Office that he didn't notice before, and they sit him down in a chair and they show him the Zapruder film from an entirely different angle.
Yeah, right.
And then they turn the lights back on and say, "Any questions?"
Yeah.
And he says, "Just what you want my agenda to be."
Yeah.
I mean, that's
totally.
I try to get this across to Trump support. And look, man, I know it's hard to admit that you got taken for a ride. I know it's hard to admit that you put stock into a system that was never designed to work for you.
Right. It was perfect for the sort of libertarian leaning conspiracy theory movement, that was gaining steam. It was perfect. You give him a Trump goes on Alex Jones. I remember when Trump was campaigning and he goes on Alex Jones, I was like, oh man. And then the Q thing, my God, how many people did the Q thing suck up into the left-right paradigm? All of a sudden, the people that were with us in 2015, 2014, saying the left-right paradigm is broken, we need to come up with a new way to think about politics in this country. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh no, Trump's our savior. Let's listen to Q, trust the plan. Where's the plan now? Where are those indictments? I mean, you got another 7 days or something, 10 days.
That's never coming. It's never.
I mean,
and look, I will say this, man. When we were at the actual, like, the speeches, right at the Ellipse, when we were there, and I didn't get inside because I didn't want to wait in line for 3 hours, and then just miss everything that I was going to miss. But so weird, man. It was so weird. Donald Trump was about, I don't know, dude, a quarter mile away, and you could kind of sort of see the stage, but you couldn't see Trump from behind the bulletproof glass, which was totally weird.
Yeah. That is far out.
So I couldn't see him, but there were speakers everywhere and you could hear him. So it was like listening to him on TV, but even more creepily authoritarian because it was just coming out of the sky.
Right.
And I'm not just saying that because I was microdosing that day. That's not how microdosing works. That's not how microdosing works at all. But when we were there, I didn't see a lot of Q people. I didn't see a lot of Q, like, I guess, costumes, or there were a handful of people that
interesting.
Had, like, Q shirts on or something like that, or had like Q sent me on the backpack or something, but way less than even just a couple of months ago during the election.
Right.
So that was hopeful. A little bright spark there.
This brings me back to another point I wanted to bring up with you. As you said, like, you and I are the same people now as we were 4 years ago. The average Republican is the same Republican now as they were 4 years ago too, and they're finding themselves, like, I feel bad. I have family. My family's from Texas. They're Republicans, and I talk to them, and they're not white nationalist fascists. They're just the same Republicans as they've ever been, and they're getting, like, hoovered into this. Yeah. I mean, we call it a psyop, right? It's just, and the vitriol from the left is so profound that these just regular people who are normal Republicans, they're not these crazy fringe groups or whatever, they're feeling like they're getting hammered. They are getting hammered. We're all afraid. I mean, I'm afraid to talk about my politics around the community,
I am absolutely unafraid to talk about my politics in my community, but as a result of that, I've lost a significant amount of people that I thought were friends.
Yeah, I imagine. And I just don't bring it up much anymore. I mean, I've had a friend of mine that, just like I started talking about some conspiracy theory stuff with a friend of mine, that we were having a separate conversation. He, like, tells me we're at his house. He's like, you can't talk about that here. He just told me, like, he just overtly censored me, like, not here. You can't talk about it. And it's just like, okay, I mean, I guess I'm not going to talk about it. I don't know why, maybe I could be more overt, and maybe I will be, because, I mean, certainly I'm starting to get to a place where local activism is getting to be important. We've got to stand up at some point. But it just seems so futile. I mean, it's like I said, I stood up for it at the radio station, and I ended up getting hammered. I mean, I got chased out of that place, and I was only arguing for freedom of speech. I wasn't even talking about conspiracy theory or this or that particular thing. I was just saying, look, one person who loves NPR shouldn't control the programming at our community station. In fact, there were rules that they were breaking, right? That said it was supposed to be an open and transparent process. Like, the rules look great. Oh, well, look at how liberal we are, and we believe in freedom of speech. They just wouldn't follow them. And anybody that said you're not following the rules, kind of just ended up getting pushed out. And I stood up for that. But it takes a lot to stand up in a community when you're just going to get hammered back down. I mean, I don't
No,
it's just so it's so challenging.
You're absolutely right. And I don't know, dude. My heathen's prayer is that the people who are currently cheering on this accelerationism, this censorship, the encouraging the division and promoting the division and like taking part in the division. My constant, I hope, prayer, whatever you want to call it, is that somebody close enough to them will experience the censorship firsthand, will experience a moment of clarity, firsthand, and that they'll be able to talk to them, because until their lives are disrupted,
right,
absolutely not. Change doesn't come from a place of comfort. It never has, it never will. Not enduring, lasting, meaningful change,
of course.
And so it's going to be down to, will a technocratic panopticon make everyone more comfortable or less comfortable? And our ability to be driven by fear or motivated by fear really is one of the determining factors of that. So it doesn't give me a lot of hope.
Yeah.
But I have some. I do. I'll tell you what, man, listening to everybody on the plane who knew that they were used as set dressing,
right,
that gave me hope.
Yeah,
It
that's
did.
actually good to hear. It's good to hear that the people in the crowd, when it was going on, like, had
Well, this
that
is after the
realization.
fact, after they were able to process. But yeah.
That they were really able to understand that, like, we just got played, we just got used, and now it's going to get used against us. Yeah. I mean, that is a positive sign.
We got about 12 minutes, Doug, and I do want to get into what happened with Julian Assange.
Yeah, let's do it.
And my Slow News Day crew is blowing me up as well. I already, was like, hey, will you please go ahead and message our guests and give them the links, and I'll be in a little bit late because there are, we like to hang out.
Yeah, right on.
Together. We do, and bullshit before the stream. Which, and I don't mind coming in hot, I don't. But I would like to cover what went down at the Old Bailey, and what that's going to look like going forward.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds pretty crazy. They made the right choice about the extradition, but then they didn't pass bail, and it looks like he's still stuck in Belmarsh, which is probably not any better place than any of the American prisons. So it's like they're keeping him locked up.
So during the witness testimony, the round of witness testimony in the rendition hearing in September, the prosecution's argument was U.S. country clubs or U.S. prisons are veritable country clubs compared to the shithole he's currently in at Belmarsh.
Right.
They have arts and crafts and color TVs and like all the staff he would ever need to help him through whatever mental issues he's going through. And it's a playground.
Yeah.
But Belmarsh is just a rat infested death trap that, we've got to get him out of so that he can go get a proper hearing in the States. That was their argument.
Right.
And to have the prosecution and the judge, because I'm sort of lumping them together, because the judge did agree with every single spurious, manufactured out of whole cloth, invented entirely from anything but reality charges that they put against. She agreed with all of them, and introduced a new charge that she convicted him of while she was reading her decision in the hearing. She said Mr. Assange is also guilty of violating the UK's Official Secrets Act, and just kind of stuck that in there, and then was like, but we can't have him extradited because the US prison system is so horrible and it's so much nicer here at Belmarsh. So here we just wrapped up UK prosecution under Official Secrets Act with a bow and handed it to them.
Right.
And we denied bail too. So now he's still a remand prisoner in Belmarsh. He is no longer charged with anything whatsoever. So he's being kept in a wing at Belmarsh that doesn't have heat, Doug. His partner, Stella Morris, tweeted out about 4 or 5 hours ago, just spoke to Julian, a pipe broke on their wing at Belmarsh. There's no heat. So for a while now, Julian had been like stuffing books in his windows. They were not giving him blankets. He's got a chronic lung condition. They put 70 prisoners who tested positive for COVID on his wing. Right. The United Kingdom is trying to murder Julian Assange because they cannot extradite him.
Cruel and unusual punishment. And it's solitary confinement as well, right?
He's on lockdown 23 and a half to 24 hours a day.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. It's torture.
It is. Absolutely 100%. And it's no longer psychological torture. This is physical torture.
Yeah.
Solitary confinement is a violation of the what is it? The UN Convention on Torture and Human Rights. There's a whole bunch of like international human rights standards.
Sure.
And look, man, the UN is an incredibly problematic agency, and that doesn't mean that there aren't occasionally like bright sparks in it who have a good idea.
Well, I mean, there's the whole story where Nils Melzner went to visit him, right, from the UN, thinking, well, this is the UK, so it's going to be no big deal. It's not going to be, and he's the UN rapporteur on torture and on these
human
kind of
rights
things.
Abuses,
yeah. And after he talked to Julian, he was like, "Oh my God! I mean, this is unbelievably horrible the way that they're treating him in a theoretically Western democracy, which is meaning less and less by the day." Clearly, and starting with the treatment of Julian Assange. I mean, there's no question. It's just outrageous. I've thought forever when the Swiss thing started happening and the whole rape allegations and all that, which shocked me at how many people, and this is what I still can't get. Like, no matter how long, how often the corporate media lies to people, they still believe it. I mean, after the Iraq war, didn't people figure it out? Like, when they didn't find the weapons of mass destruction, weren't people like, maybe I should stop listening to these guys because they're feeding me full of crap, And instead, they just keep believing whatever it is. And the entire left wing literally abandoned Assange because of these treatment of women. And it was like, but can't you tell that that's a honey trap? I mean,
Yeah. Well, there are emails that WikiLeaks put out from HB Gary and from Stratfor that say exactly, keep him tied up in court from year to year. You set him up in a honey trap. Do this, do that. Do exactly what they're doing. And we are fortunate that Niels Melzer is fluent in Swedish because he was able to get a hold of emails between the UK Crown Prosecution Service, or UK. I can't remember what the acronym is.
Yeah.
One of their three-letter agencies that that Keir Starmer, the current head of the Labour Party, was running. Interestingly enough, but emails between that agency and the Swedish police, and so Melzer published them in an interview
Hmm.
with it's either a Swiss or a Czech magazine called Republic. Might be Swiss. He's Swiss. Um, but yeah, fortunately fluent in Swedish, and and he was like, "Oh my God, that was." In this interview, he's like, I realized this was a setup. I
Right.
realized that this was false, that, these women had been pressured into filing these claims when they tried to, rescind them. One of them was denied entirely and had a falsified report made up. The other one was threatened.
Wow. Yeah.
And so this has all come out, but when Melzer went to England and said, "Hey, you're torturing this guy," they ignored him. And by UN law, they're at least required to open an investigation, which they still haven't done. And he
Right.
submitted his report like the third week of May of 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so sad. It's so unbelievable. And exactly like you said, they're just keeping him in jail for as long as they can. I mean, they don't have to have a judgment against him, you know?
Nope.
They can just use the bureaucracy of the system to keep him there forever. What do you think's going to happen with the US appeal?
Um, it's gonna be real hard because they have to. The only thing that they can challenge is the suicidal ideation and the condition of U.S. prisons. So it's going to be hard for them to win that legally.
Mhm.
You know, um, they're going to have to sway a panel of magistrates who have already, or have already achieved everything they're going to achieve in climbing the ladder, judiciary ladder. So it's
Right.
going to be a lot harder for them to make that argument than with Judge Baraitser, who is just starting to come up. She's a magistrate. She's not even a like an official judge. She's a district judge.
Sure.
There are fancier robes and more official titles in the judiciary that I'm sure await her now.
Right.
But when they go to appeal, it'll be an entirely different audience, and they are going to drag this out for as long as possible, because when they thought they were going to win, they were putting a huge amount of pressure on the Crown Prosecutorial Service to fast track the appeal.
Right.
And Stella Morris and Christian Ramson, current editor of WikiLeaks, were both saying, like, okay, if we don't get this, Julian's feet could touch American soil by May of 2021.
Mhm.
And all of that's going to disappear. They're going to make this take as long as humanly possible. They are trying to murder this man in Belmarsh prison by freezing him out or giving him a virus.
Yeah.
And there's no, like, I don't see a legal avenue for them to win on appeal, but nothing about this has been legal.
Yeah, I mean,
Nothing.
they're going to do whatever they want to do, right? How long if they don't get an appeal, then how long can they hold him in Belmarsh? I mean, does he have to be freed if
Up
they
to 5 years while they're going through the process.
of the appeal of the of oh, so we're waiting on this appellate choice and it could take up to 5 years.
Now, yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Okay. Wow. That's just insane to even they can hold you for 5 years without a trial while they
Um,
decide whether or not they're going to appeal a case. That's insane.
Yeah, I mean, well, everything about this is unprecedented.
Yeah.
Everything about it, and everything about it has violated UK law, Swedish law, Ecuadorian law, US law,
Right.
international law. There's no that John Pilger, documentary filmmaker, and ardent advocate for Julian Assange, said this is not due process. This is due revenge.
Yeah, clearly. I don't know when people are going to wake up, Steve. I don't know when they're going to wake up. How many examples like Julian Assange do we have to see? How many times does a Michael Hastings have to get blown up in his car? How many times do we have to have these Twitter purges?
Going on right now too.
Yeah, these social media purges before people. How many times they have to be lied to by the mainstream media about the weapons of mass destruction or about any of these narratives that are constantly being rehashed? The Russiagate narrative. It's just so amazing to see the control of information that people are putting up with complete and utter faith that the corporate media is telling them the truth, despite the fact that the evidence is overwhelming that they're constantly being lied to. And then the people who are trying to tell the truth are getting punished, and the average person in the population is basically cheering it on. It's mind-blowing, Steve. It's mind-blowing.
I mean, you're right.
Yeah.
You are. I do. I think that I think that we have an opportunity that we probably haven't had before in the next just couple of months. Because there are people that have, at least the people that were on the ground at the Trump event, the people that were there for our Assange events, the people who put together and covered the Force the Vote events that took place this first week of January too. Like, everybody was there because their government had failed them.
Right.
And we were able to get that out to a lot of people. And that energy is here. It's we've got to find other ways besides Twitter and Facebook and YouTube to
Yeah.
communicate to people, and we've got to get people off of those platforms and onto other ones, BitChute, DLive, Rockfin, whatever. And by the way, go support the show on Rockfin because they're awesome. But Doug,
Totally.
I really do got to
I
split.
hear you. You want to tell my audience where they can find your stuff? Is it mostly on the YouTube channel?
slownewsdayshow.com.
Okay.
Or Rockfin. You can go make a free account on Rockfin. All of my content is free for at least 24 hours. If you subscribe to the channel, if you endorse Slow News Day for $9.99 a month, you get access to all of the premium content from everybody else on the platform. It's like a Netflix for content creators. They don't censor us. They want us. They ask us, how can we make this platform better for you? It's created with content creators in mind. And again, you can get a free account and get almost everybody's content there for at least, a day after they upload it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right on.
ROKFIN.
All right. Sounds good, man. Well, thanks a lot for coming on. I know you got a show to do yourself. So, hopefully we'll do it again sometime.
Absolutely, man.
Great
Anytime,
conversation.
just let me know. Happy to do it. Got to get you on Slow News Day as well.
Sounds like a plan. I'd love to.
All right, brother.
Okay. Take it easy. Have a good one.
You too, man.
All right. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That was my conversation with Steve Poikonen of Slow News Day. I got to tell you, I really was in need of that conversation. I needed to talk to somebody that I thought was a sane individual who held my similar belief system, and especially somebody who was there at the Capitol in Washington, D.C., who could give us a firsthand account of what actually went down from his point of view there. Initially when I heard the news, I just couldn't believe it. I think Steve, I don't know if it's going to make it into the public section, but the members will hear that he described how people on the airplane on the flight home really felt like they had gotten played. They went out to Washington, D.C. They wanted to have a rally for election integrity. They were looking forward to an honest debate in Congress where maybe some of this information about potential criminal behavior, miscounting of the election, so they were looking forward to this debate that was going to be open and honest, get some of this information out there, see what people thought, come to a vote. I don't know how many people really thought that, something was going to radically change, but at least some of this information is going to get out there. I mean, the mainstream media has just been telling people that there is no credible source of information that says that the election could have been tampered with in any meaningful way whatsoever. And I think a lot of us who are looking at alternative sources are finding graphs and charts and people who've been doing some pretty serious research that say otherwise. And we're just trying to get this information into the light of day so that the American public can have an honest and open debate about the situation. It's just so frustrating to hear over and over again that this information that we're seeing that seems legitimate just doesn't exist. I mean, and most Americans believe that it doesn't. They just think that people are lying about it, making stuff up. And it's just continuing to degrade the political dialogue that has only gotten worse and worse over the last 4 years here in the United States. And so once I found out that the Congress building had been stormed by certain individuals, saw the videos of the cops just letting them into the building, I was just kind of devastated. And I think a lot of people in the crowd, according to Steve's firsthand account, were pretty devastated as well. They showed up to show support and hope to see some of this information come out on the floor of Congress and have a legitimate debate about it. And instead, it just turned into this completely chaotic disaster. And then, of course, the mainstream media follows it up with insurrection, coup, Trump incited these people to this incredible violence. I'm not trying to be a Trump supporter here or anything. I'm just somebody who's covered the problems with the election machines for a decade now. I've done multiple interviews and hours of research on this, and clearly there's issues that need to be discussed. I was hoping that some of this stuff would come out. And after this disaster on the Capitol, clearly it's not. If there are people who are stealing these elections, then those people had a lot to gain from what just happened last Wednesday. So I was happy to talk to Steve. I had him on the show to talk specifically about Assange, and I really wanted to cover the Assange thing, and we've kind of got to it in the last 15 minutes, and I'll make sure to get that information out to everybody. But we really did end up focusing on this because it just was such an incredibly big event, a kind of a foundation shaking event. In terms of, I don't know, not really what happened on the Capitol that day, to be honest with you. I'm seeing people that are inside the Capitol building walking back and forth as if they're at the museum, like any other day on Capitol Hill when you can go visit your congressman. It didn't seem crazy. There just seemed to be these handful of goons that caused a lot of problems and allowed the mainstream media to create this narrative that, Trump supporters were violent and it was a violent mob and an insurrection and a coup. We ended up talking quite a bit about that, and I hope you get a lot from hearing that firsthand account, because we get so much information on the internet. Everything's coming out. It's nice to hear somebody that was actually there on the ground making it happen. Of course, now it's been a couple of days since I talked to Steve, but we're seeing just massive censorship. The mainstream media narrative came out. The censorship on Twitter, Facebook, etc., probably YouTube. I'm not sure if this one's going to make it or not, right? But it's just getting completely out of control. I'm hearing so many people on the left who are really actually advocating for this kind of behavior. It makes me sad. I try to stay out of the left-right paradigm, but right now I'm having a lot of empathy for the Trump supporters that I think legitimately just want to see this election situation like ironed out, to see a real legitimate investigation into these voting machines, which again, I've seen problems with for years. So, why not? What's the harm? And now, of course, people who are holding this perspective are cornered as white nationalists, white supremacists, Trump supporters, armed militants, domestic terrorists, you name it. I'm sure we're going to start seeing a lot of legislation going through the Congress that's going to make it even more difficult to have a conversation about election integrity, or to have these conversations in the future. So it is disheartening to see. Things are moving really fast, and so you never know. Let's try to get this information out there. I was really happy that Steve was One thing I wanted to mention, I mentioned this a lot on the show. I did want to mention this. Dealing with the left-right paradigm is starting to get just plain frustrating for me, and I think for a lot of people out there. Like, let's just create a system that works and have open and transparent debate about these variety of issues. The wedge that has been created, and I blame the corporate media for this, and I think it's done on purpose. The racial divisions, the left-right divisions are absolutely preventing people from getting together and doing something about what clearly is rampant corruption going on in the United States government. So I don't know what the solution is, guys, but let's keep talking about it. Let's keep trying to get people like Steve to tell us about their experiences, and let's keep supporting the independent media. So if you're interested, please check out his show. He has done a lot to support Julian Assange, and he's doing a lot for the First Amendment rights that are more and more in danger every day. And the Julian Assange case is just more of this, right? I mean, it's just the same thing. This guy's been dealing with it for 10 years because he's posting stuff on WikiLeaks that, you know, the intelligence communities around the world just don't appreciate that kind of behavior. And now he's been forced into horrible conditions in this prison in the United Kingdom. And it looks like he could be there indefinitely. And so whether or not he's actually ever found guilty of any kind of charge, they're keeping him locked up clearly as an example to other journalists that if you produce information that we do not like, then this can happen to you. And it's really unfortunate. So hope you enjoyed the conversation I had with Steve. It was very refreshing for me. And please look up his work at slownewsday.com. You can also find him at Slow News Day on YouTube and Slow News Day Show on Twitter. So please check out that information. And of course, you can find me. I'm on Facebook and YouTube at The Shift, or you can look me up, Doug McKenty, The Shift with Doug McKenty, on your favorite podcast hosting site. And actually, please check out the website. I'm trying to get more and more people to go to the website. It's www.theshiftnow.com. You can find the podcast on pretty much all of your favorite podcast hosting sites. And so check it out. And I will continue to crank these out. I'll have another one out for you next week. I am speaking with Dr. Robert Young about the pH miracle. This guy's really helped a lot of people, even apparently is helping a lot of cancer patients out by raising the pH in their blood, just basically by giving them a diet that is super healthy. And it works for all of us. So stay tuned for that one coming out next week. And I will see you all very soon. Thanks for checking this out. Take care.